your roof can become hotter than 150 degrees Fahrenheit on a sunny summer day. That heat doesn't just disappear. It slowly moves into your attic, warms your ceilings, and forces your air conditioner to work harder every single hour. Most people think the only way to stay cool is to buy a bigger AC or keep lowering the thermostat. But what if a simple $5 material could reduce the amount of heat entering your home in the first place? It sounds too good to be true. So instead of believing the marketing, I wanted to understand how it actually works, where it helps, and whether it's really worth using. What I found was much more interesting than I expected. To understand this, we first need to know how heat enters your home. There are three ways heat moves: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction is heat moving through solid materials. Convection is heat carried by moving air. But during a hot summer day, one of the biggest problems is radiant heat. When sunlight hits your roof, the shingles absorb an enormous amount of energy. That energy turns into heat, and your roof begins radiating it into the attic below. Even if the outside air isn't extremely hot, the attic can become much hotter because your roof acts like a giant heater sitting above your head. Your air conditioner now has to fight all of that extra heat. It runs longer, uses more electricity, and your energy bill keeps climbing. This is where the $5 heat shield comes in. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than shiny aluminum foil. It doesn't contain electronics, batteries, or any complicated technology. In fact, its entire job is based on one simple principle of physics: reflection. Dark surfaces absorb heat, while reflective surfaces bounce much of that radiant energy away. It's the same reason emergency blankets have a shiny silver surface. Instead of absorbing body heat, they reflect it back toward you. In buildings, the same idea works in reverse. Instead of trapping heat inside, the reflective surface helps keep outside heat from entering. The concept isn't new. Similar reflective materials have been used in spacecraft, industrial buildings, and modern construction for years. The question is whether such an inexpensive version can actually make a noticeable difference in a normal home. The answer is yes, but only under the right conditions. A reflective heat barrier works best when it faces an open air space. That's because radiant heat travels through empty space. If the reflective material is pressed tightly between two solid surfaces, it loses much of its advantage. In other words, simply buying the material isn't enough. Where and how it's installed matters just as much as the product itself. Many homeowners make the mistake of placing reflective foil where it can't do its job. They expect dramatic results, but because it was installed incorrectly, they notice very little improvement. Then they assume the product doesn't work. In reality, physics hasn't failed. The installation has. When installed properly in a hot attic, the reflective barrier can reduce the amount of radiant heat entering the living space. That means your attic stays cooler, your ceiling absorbs less heat, and your air conditioner doesn't have to run as often. Notice something important here. The heat shield isn't producing cold air. It isn't replacing your air conditioner. Instead, it's reducing the amount of heat your cooling system has to remove. That difference may sound small, but over weeks and months of hot weather, it can make a meaningful impact. Of course, it's not a miracle solution. If your attic has almost no insulation, large air leaks, or poor ventilation, a reflective barrier alone won't solve every problem. In many homes, sealing air leaks or improving insulation may provide even greater benefits. The best energy-efficient homes usually combine several strategies instead of relying on a single product. Climate also makes a huge difference. So, is the $5 heat shield worth the hype? If you expect it to replace your air conditioner, the answer is no. If you expect it to magically cut your electricity bill in half, probably not. But if you understand what it was actually designed to do, reflect radiant heat before it enters your home, Then it becomes a surprisingly smart and affordable upgrade, especially in the right climate and when installed correctly. Sometimes the biggest improvements don't come from expensive machines or advanced electronics. Sometimes they come from understanding basic physics and using it to your advantage. Instead of creating more cooling power, the smarter solution is often stopping unnecessary heat before it ever enters your home. And that's exactly why such a simple piece of reflective material continues to be used in everything from homes to spacecraft. The technology may be simple, but the science behind it is surprisingly powerful.